Well, um, on this conference, you see a lot of companies that came here and essentially expose what they are doing and how amazing they are. But usually, when you're starting up development, this gets a lot of attraction. People that arrive to the community, but they don't know how to arrive to this kind of stage that you have actor models or things like that. Like this is because you need to solve some issues and some mistakes that you did at the beginning, and then you are growing with that. So it's kind of difficult to see for you at the beginning. So this talk is kind of how it was our journey from one file to multiple files, and why we split something, and which patterns we use at the beginning and which pattern we use right now. So yeah, let's add a bit of context about the Koya. So yeah, the app is pretty big. Like 72K lines is right now at that stage. We have contribute 12 to 15 developers. Some of them are already on the company. Some of them moved to the different areas. Now full time there are 7, but essentially it's because we have even applications that were right for SRE, that internal tooling they came from Go or for Python, and they're right interfaces for the internal, I don't know how looks like the Kubernetes cluster or things like that. So yeah, any of us, we had previous professional experience and all. Yeah, different backgrounds. So actually, Ruby, React, TypeScript, as I said before, SRE backgrounds, and yeah. So yeah, and a bit of the context about me. Yeah, 2 years and 6 months. This is more or less my actual contribution. Changed a bit because since I prepared the presentation today, probably something is deployed. Yeah, and since the beginning, I set up the onboarding also for the team. It was pretty important. I really scared at the beginning for attract more developers to the technology without even me being completely sure that I can handle that. So yeah, but let's talk about how we evolve. So I essentially separate this in 3 main topics. How we evolve in the parent-child communication about modules, how we evolve in the UI functions and widgets, how we evolve also in our API engagement deploying. So first, let's go for the parent-child communication. So this is pretty easy. How starts every application? One file, one update function, you put everything there. So you have something like this. So yeah, this is an example from the tutorial, the Buddha example essentially. So you have decrement, increment. When you click, you increment the model +1. When you decrement the model -1. So then you can do something like that. So essentially you extract the Buddha into a different module. So you say, yeah, let's put all the logic of the Buddha in a different module and then import it in the main application and then I use it. So, and then in the update function, I essentially move the messages, so I call the messages with a wrapper type that carries the messages back again to the Buddha and then updates the model again, like before. Some inconvenience of this, when you start growing and you see this inconvenience, is essentially that the update function is growing and growing and growing. And probably you see this error message on the compiler that is like, hey, the 15 branch of the case class doesn't work because whatever. And if you cannot go to you need to count one by one, what is the branch that you are, probably is not the best. No, this is developer experience. Even if the compiler tries to help you, it's difficult for you because how you structure the code, you get lost, essentially. Also, jump between files is complicated. So you go to the Buddha module to modify some message and new actions and change the views and things like that. But then you need to go back to the main one, find the branch where is this thing happening, add the extra cases and how the model should behave. So then we came with a solution. It was the out message pattern. So essentially, the out message pattern is slightly different by the actor pattern with the out message that was explained before in this conference. This is completely different implementation, kind of. So it's that you return essentially a tuple of 3 elements from the child element. So the child element carries his model state, has essentially some command size for himself if you need to figure something else. And all messages are essentially commands that later with the helper function you will handle. Like you get this function on the parent child, you get all these messages, and you re-trigger something on your parent. That's cool, actually. It's really kind of like separate the concerns, but you end again with some inconveniences. So this solves the jam between files. Actually, it can be even worse because the messages and the actions get split between all the parents. So you need a message that goes from one point to another one, and then one point to another one, and then another one. So it's like kind of like a lot of boilerplate. So you can get also break the debugger, kind of like the debugger or the time travel debugging cannot help you anymore because you need to jump from the button value to the button message to the form to the product to the index. So it's, then you generate something like that to propagate the value to the top. It's really confusing at the end, even for entry points. And also, there's this boilerplate thing that you need evaluate child message per layer. So you need to evaluate button value layer with the button message, with the index. So you need to go to the top. It's really exhausting. Just functions to pass a value to the top when they are not doing anything. It's like a kind of like boilerplate that you can avoid, essentially, or we would like to avoid. So yeah, so then we came with the actual implementation that we are currently, we still have 2 or 3 pages. I don't know if you, in the meantime I was here, so essentially they are not existing anymore. But yeah, good. So this is actually a solution that I am really checking the MSPA, how they are doing these kind of things. This is pretty interesting because instead of having the flat model on the top, they have something that they call session. So essentially, the session is kind of a wide list of attributes that you pass from one state to the next one of your application. So you can essentially say, okay, wipe up everything since I moved from one place to another one, and I don't need to propagate my child state anymore because everything that I need to share is on the session. So everything that needs to be shared between different states on the page is carried over inside the session. So it's pretty nice pattern actually. So you can place there all your like common general things to do. So yeah, and also you remove kind of like this kind of shared dependency of attributes. For example, if you have a page and you have a title, you want to have like a specific type for the title of the index page and a different type of the title of the about page of your website. So why you need to share the same attribute on the top level of the model? You can have your custom type because at the end it will be removed when you change from one page to another one. So it's pretty neat actually. You can say, okay, I want to keep this, everything else is not mandatory for me for the next state, so wipe everything. Yeah, a session looks something like this, more or less. So you place some stuff that you need to keep there, probably from page to page or state to state. Yeah, so these are kind of like the nice things about the session. So it extracts all the actions in the session type, so you can, yeah, as I said before, you can carry over all the messages that you, not the messages, the values that you need to keep for the next, are useful for the next state. So yeah, the session can be updated into the pages. So the main module doesn't need to handle updates kind of like messages anymore. So they need to update a wrap message for your specific like page state, but you place all the messages out of the main module anymore. So you don't need it anymore. I will have it like this. So yeah. Okay. Oh, so yeah. The capacity of the Here we go. So, so the page modules actually gets capacity to modify the session. So again, you can extract this logic from the main application, from the main module. So if you are on a page and you need to modify the user, you just call the session, modify the user, and then the user is one source of truth for the next page. So you don't need to carry over the messages to the parent. So you eliminate completely this dependency of the parent for being able to handle something. Yeah, so that was more or less our journey on the modules. But you know, sometimes some modules need some different logic. Not everything is pages. Not everything is the same thing. So yeah, usually you want to share the UX things between, move around. So let's start from the basic thing. So you want to have some kind of warning bar that you display with the user when you have some kind of like notification. And yeah, you write the styles like this there, like in a line. Yeah, and pass the content, then you display the warning. So pretty easy. Then you can move into something like this. So you can call the warning on your view, and then you render the warning. But it's kind of cool. Then you can even use kind of like a local type that specify the message that you are passing by is specifically a warning. So it's kind of nice also because you can don't pass accidentally something that is not a warning to this like widget. So site convenience is this approach that you can take at the beginning, essentially, that is kind of nice and simple, is that the custom types are mixed with your kind of logic of the applications. All the hyper functions that interact with these custom types are also shared. So it are kind of like different kind of domains. So why some page have something that is not really related to the page is more related to how you handle a widget of the page. So also this cannot be easily reused. So or you duplicate the code, or you need to share code between pages that doesn't make much more sense. So yeah, we came with this kind of thing. So we do kind of some inspiration for things like CSS frameworks, like Bootstrap. Like you essentially have like a main CSS file with a bunch of helpers that you can use as classes. So it's kind of the same mechanism. You add a node, you put the mixing, and then here we go. You have the styles that you can use. This is an example. So yeah, this is like warning styles helper that essentially you will use later to display like, I don't know, a paragraph or a div or whatever you want on the top of the page with the styles and the content. It's kind of like also kind of a nice solution because you share the styles between different areas, so you can essentially give the look and feel of a warning with whatever paragraph or whatever div or whatever thing that you want in a different pages of the application. Inconveniences. Well, we lose this kind of nice things about the types because the warning is not there anymore. So because you don't essentially have the entire widget, you only have the style for give the widget the kind of a look and feel. So you only reuse that part. And then also you can have this extra CSS there around that can give you inconsistency UX experiences, and the designers get really mad with you when you do that. So then we end with something like this. So we create some UI elements reusing the CSS mixings that we have before. They are useful. They already have the style, so we will not use them inside some UI elements thing. So yeah, this is essentially the warning. Again, so you have some module that is a warning, and now you have a proper type, even states that says that if the warning disappears, appears, and one warning configuration that essentially explains to you what is the warning state, how is the interface to the outside. Yeah, some styles also inside if you want to customize a little bit because you are using too many mixings and you want to give something specific that's not shareable, let's say, into different UI elements. So you just kind of do something like that. Yeah, toast styles plus state styles, and you have your sites. Yeah, we come to the view. So Yeah, this is essentially the view inside the warning. So they expose how they look and feel is and what is the requirement. So you need to pass a config that is only exclusive for the warning, and you need to then pass essentially this to internal like view, and then you know that you are blind. So if you use this interface, you don't kind of modify the internal UI elements. So then the designers are happier. So yeah, even you can reduce even more. You can go to opaque types and techniques that reduce actually how you can generate these warning elements. Even you can essentially give a specific constructor so you cannot access to them anymore. So you can limit the interface to what you expose that are warning active or disabled. You don't expose the configuration anymore. You don't expose anything, any internal types to be modified. So yeah, it's pretty nice, and you can essentially read this and say, okay, I know how this widget works. But yeah, these have some disadvantages that it's really nice, it's really neat, and helps us a lot. But essentially, we want to move forward. We want to offer this in the initialized environment, and we want to essentially auto-generate these widgets. So yeah, it's not like the implementation is not nice. It's that we want to use it to something, a different use case, that we need to cover that. For that is that because we don't know, we cannot automate this thing because you don't know essentially what will be exposed to the outside, because every kind of widget element can be different. So it's kind of complicated to know in advance how they will behave, so you can automate this process. So you need to kind of define some kind of workflow, some kind of framework to essentially attach them to that framework. Yeah, so also they need more documentation because since they cannot be displayed in style guide, the documentation can be auto-generated, so then it's kind of like the same thing. Also for template compositions, if you want to have like a bunch of things that behave the same and you can essentially call them together and create some kind of template or some sort of template, then it's kind of also difficult again because you need to adapt every element to map them to a new common behave, let's say. So then we come with this. Actually, it's online. You can check it. We completely exposed to the, if someone wants to check how we do things. And we have some kind of plans in the hackathons that we organized every 3 months to move this like an open source library that maybe people can use or contribute or whatever they want. So yeah, feel free to check it and write your comments or whatever in the attendees like Discord channel. Yes, so this is essentially how they look inside. This is a component. We have some kind of like, again, some kind of types that describes how they look like. Then you pass the loop, you pass some string, and then you get your component back again, and you have like different things. We also use kind of like this module name attribute essentially to track the modules on the interface, because essentially now with MTSS it generates random classes. So for the end-to-end testing for the QA team, it's difficult to find these elements. So they can use this module name thing that we propagate to the end with the library, internal libraries that we have to create essentially these components to the HTML, and then they can essentially track if some module is there or is not there, or things like that. You can see now this even supports Markdown. That is kind of nice. For the internal library, essentially what we did, since it doesn't have introspection capability, so you cannot say, you cannot evaluate what is the code, and in between, depending on the code, you generate something else. We had this kind of types inside the application, and then we generate a binding with the style guide from these types. So essentially, this introspection gives you a kind of a model and a message that can be triggered by this element, and then a function that can be called by the parent kind of application that is on style guide that is completely separate from the main one. So, and renders what you can see on the URL that I facilitated you before. So yeah, here you go. This is something that not many people talk about, is the one of the pipeline. So under the code on the JSON decoder library. So essentially, a lot of people have problems when they are generating the APIs, like connectors or decoders. So we start with typical approach. So we start with something that decodes, and we write that, and that's nice or whatever. But yeah, sometimes you deploy a lot of things, and you need to be sure that what the code or decoder match with is in sync with your backend. So essentially, we generate the API modules from the backend, from the coders and already write down or whatever. So yeah, these have some disadvantages. Sometimes they broke, essentially. If you have a dependency, you use them, they broke your integration on your application that doesn't compile. So you cannot automate this process. Always need it to be handled by the developer, like runs the script, there's the generation, fix the bindings with your external, not HTTP related code. And then, yeah, it's kind of like, it's nice as a bootstrap point, but when your applications start growing and you need to modify it, it's kind of like this automated workflow doesn't fit really well. So what we did essentially was something like move the versioning of the backend into the frontend. That is something that not many people does, and give you that by default. So you can essentially use the one-off attribute to give different versions that can be serialized. So you can be one step and a half. So the migration goes first on the front end. Then when the backend is ready and sends different sort of data, your front end is ready and can display a different interface for this new data. So this is more or less like approach. Yeah, you have something like this. I put some pizza because I like pizza. So yeah, you have pizza ingredients. Yeah, you decode the pizza like this. Yeah, and you then under the decoder you map the pizza, the ingredients from the JSON that comes from outside. But let's say that yeah, today is Monday, and you know we find better ingredients combination, and you want to release the new ingredients. So we have like something like this. So we have the pizza and pizza version 2 ingredients, and then you have ham, and then you can do something like that. So you can have the requirements of what is the JSON for the different versions of the same endpoint, and then you can merge them with the one-off technique. So then when you serialize something, you check if it's one thing or another one, and you generate different types. So some conclusions about in generally this kind of like things that you can see that the companies does and arrive to this kind of like implementations is because and have a different way of thinking about other languages. So they don't push you into some specific patterns. They don't push you as something else. They push you into evaluate your problem, evaluate what we are doing, evaluate what you want to solve, and then draft your best on the code. So that's why different companies are to different solutions that they work, because everything have a different mindset, a different impact from different people. So essentially, don't assume these solutions are always suitable for you. So it's kind of like we have our conclusions, you will have your own. So don't follow mine, essentially. Give inspiration as everybody, I think, in the M community tries to propagate to the new people. And this kind of talk is more oriented to that. So don't be scared about the scale. So Elm will guide you. You have the compiler, you will feel the pain in every other implementation. So don't plan in advance so much. So it's like kind of crazy that you implement some features that are not coming, and then you sacrifice your type integrity because you want to add extra features that maybe doesn't came, or maybe came, because product managers and owners never change minds. So I think that Elm will guide you in this process to take decisions. So yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan. Are there questions? Any questions? Okay.
I did a good job. What's a good job then?
That was a good job. Everyone is completely enlightened. So.